Now we can hear you. You're up, Don.
Thank you.
Let's call it.
So I'm Don Geiger, and I've been turning for 26 years. And one of the things I identified very early in getting into wood turning was that having good sharp tools, properly shaped tools, really helps you get to a point of fruition when you're trying to turn something much more easily. I've made a real effort with studying a lot of the tools by the top professionals, not just glancing at them and walking away, but really talking to them about them and learning. In 2001 or 2, I had my buddy well up a system that I wanted to go with under the Geiger.
Let's see if you can pull that mic up. Just try that.
And
Oh, yeah.
so anytime y'all have a problem like that, just throw something at track. But so anyway, I came out with a system for my own use, and some of my friends saw it at club meetings and stuff, and they go, wow, you need to do a tour at the symposium coming up. You need to get a booth and sell these. So I had my friends roll up about 50 of them and sold every one. I was like, that's pretty wild. So I started doing this, you know, and I had about five different models of this thing as years passed, and I sold over 2,000 systems. And so it kind of had one return at the time. That was it, just one. I felt like this is a good solid product. The number one wood turner in the world, as far as most people are concerned, is David Ellsworth. And I got one in David's hands when I first had the first one built, the first few built. And today when you see a photograph of this teacher studio, the system's still in the binder. That made me feel pretty good. You know, that he didn't just buy it, keep it 6 months and throw it out. But I retired in September and decided I was done supplying anything whatsoever, and I'll go fishing or kayaking or something, although I haven't done that yet. But the latest system that I came out with probably 6 or 7 years ago was called the Evolution system. And it facilitated what I needed to do in the variety of gouges that I used. But when it really gets down to it, somebody like yourselves, I'm going to show you tonight, you can probably make the system very easily in your own shop and probably spend $20, $25, and hopefully it will last you a long time and give you satisfaction in your turning. But in sharpening. But what I want to do tonight is when I start, I would be negligent if I didn't cover some of the safety defects that you have to pay attention to. And most of these apply wood turning and sharpening. But when you are at the wheels, you can possibly get something in your eyes, and so wear eye protection of some kind. And then I hope I have one.
Right here.
They're on my neck. That's a good place for them. I'm getting always a lot of protection. But that's one of the things. And the other thing is what I've seen in classes. I've worked with students a lot where they take a jig where they're holding their tool or something, and they come off the side of the wheel, and they're pressing the tool into the wheel. And what happens if you go off the side, the tool falls forward, and the jig can hit the wheel, and it's a major disaster when it occurs. It can smash your finger. maybe even break the wheel, who knows. But, so trying to teach people to concentrate on keeping the tool in the wheel while they're working, and practice trying to do that with the binder off. Don't practice with it running. And then the other thing to do is, whenever if you've got a good repeatable position with your tool on the wheel, you don't need to bring pressing on the wheel, because it's not going to cut any better. What you want to do is just kind of slide it like this, or if it's sliding off, and you're supposed to center, you're not pushing forward, and you're still safe. And so you can kind of come back and float the tool back and forth across the width of the wheel. How many of y'all are already set up with some kind of a grinder and some kind of system? I guess I should ask who's not. Anybody not set up at the time? How many of you are using what we call a wolverine system? It's a commercial. Again, I should say. I should ask how many are not using something like that? Matt? Do you feel alone out there?
I feel alone.
What do you do on this?
I got something similar off of Amazon, but
Okay, but it mimics and
Yeah.
performs some of. I would say that the majority of the woodturners in the world use a system like this, either this brand or another. And that's really good to hear that y'all have gotten that. What I always did was I sold systems that were aftermarket products to the woodworker. So I wasn't trying to replace the woodworker, I was trying to enhance it. You know, because they're able to do more variety of things to make it more repeatable, accurate, and repeatable. And you'll see some of that soon. The other thing, of course, and this goes for wood-blade turning as well, we have long hair tied up behind you, make sure it's not going to flop down and get into a rotating wheel or a lathe wood. And then if they have jewelry on, I took my wedding ring off to come here tonight, so I didn't have it on. If I had sleeves or something like that, I'd roll them up. But it's just a really good idea. When I was in high school, the instructor's assistant, who was a senior in high school, was standing in the lathe talking to us about safety. And the lathe was running, and it dragged him into the lathe and ripped his shirt completely off of it, thankfully. And I was like, well, that's a pretty good lesson in safety. I hope that was planned, you know. But it really opened your eyes. Things can go bad really, really rapidly. Do you have any questions about safety? I mean, your wheels, I use an aggregate type wheel. There are CBN wheels out there that are solid metal, either aluminum or steel. These types of wheels could potentially blow apart or something, but I think I've only seen one example of that ever in all these years I've been really dealing with these. And the gentleman that did it was one of the most aggressive binder guys, that I've ever seen. And he just, and he sent me a picture of his wheel separated, stayed within the guards, which is really nice. And of course it stopped turning, stopped spinning. Okay. And where I turn, I always want to have nothing to discourage me from sharpening. I want to be set up so that my sharpening station is adjacent to where I'm turning. And so I'm on a rolling mechanics cart, two of them. And also where the tools are, I have on that mechanics cart, I've got a rack full of tools on the left-hand side on this side of it, and left-hand from this viewpoint. And I always stand right here when I'm sharpening, And so I've got a rack full of tools right here, pick them up and use them, I pick them up and use them, I pick them up and use them, and my lathe is right here. It was hard to teach a guy one time, and I kept saying, okay, well, you know, your tool's getting a little tall. He goes, oh, it's okay, it's all right. And it's just like, it's time to sharpen. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I figured out what was wrong was that his grinder was on the other side of the shop. It was discouraging to him to have to take the time out, you know, walk all the way over there, take his tool splitting, get over there, sharpen, and then go back. I said, you need to move either your lathe or your grinder more closely. But that's, and having the tools right at the grinder is significantly important. Even tonight, I've got my tools right here that I'm sharpening it for you. And I'm standing right here. Now, I stand on this side of the grinder, which that, with my rolling cart, that's not a problem whatsoever. Some people don't look at it. So they got this only workbench, and so they have to walk up to it this way. Well, what I didn't like was I was trying to use a jig, and I had to go on the left side and the right side. I've got a handle on the tool, and I'm wrestling around here. So I can stand right here. I'm out of line of fire. I can see exactly what I'm doing better, and I can go through the rotation of my tools, never moving my body. It really worked out a lot better. When I go out and do demos for clubs and stuff, and symposiums or whatever, I always say, well, you know, I need to get our grinder on this side of the table, or a table. And they're like, why? Why is that so important? We want to push it over here to the camera. We can watch this guy. He moved the camera around for me. But that's just something to think about. You'll see the way that I'm sharpening, and you'll understand. But what I'm doing is I'm concentrating on the edge that I'm sharpening to look, in this case, with these types of wheels. You get scintillation, which is the little sparks that come off. And scintillation sparks will come around the wheel. And when they start to go over that edge, I know that I've got a sharp edge. See, the end wheel doesn't give you that. You know, there's other advantages to them. But I'm always looking, and if I'm standing right here, I can see that happening. And I'm sitting there, and the other thing is I do what I call selective sharpening when I sharpen the tool. Some people can tell to take a bolt house, for instance, and go completely around it, you go completely around it, go completely around it, and I've got a hump somewhere that I need to concentrate on. And so I would rather be able to stay here and kind of look and examine it, and I go, you know, there's a little hump right there I need to take out. I'll position that tool while I'm still watching it and just work on that one little area. I don't have to keep going back and forth and back and forth. I believe that one of the most important things you can do in a sharpening system, say, like I'm going to show you tonight, is accuracy, setting up, getting the double angle on the tool as you desire, and being able to make a very repeatable grind every time you go back to the grinder. Repeatability is a significantly important part of sharpening. What it does for you is you spend a lot less time, and you also get less wear of your tools because you're not sitting there having to change stuff every time. And it saves you a lot in terms of that. And then when you go back to work on the piece of lathe, you don't have to relearn it. You know, you don't have to relearn the new shape that you put on it, trying to get it to work. Any questions at this point? You're welcome. Yes.
What grip are you using?
Okay, thank you. He says, what grip am I using? This is an 80 grit wheel, and this is a 46 grit wheel. It just so happens that this is a flat wheel, it's flat across the surface, and then this one has a slight crown to it. It's about 1/64 of an inch crown. This side over here I use for all my jig sharpening, jig supported sharpening. This one over here is on my hand sharpening. Now, if you look at the results that I'm getting, I don't know if you pass this some tools or not. We're going to pass these around, and look at that was done with an 80 grit. You know, you get a pretty smooth result, and what I attribute that to is proper dressing of the wheel. So you're using, I went to a demo one time at one of the woodworking shows, and I had that format booth, and the person demonstrating the format booth, he had a grading stick. He'd go, well, format's got a reputation for being so slow and not very aggressive enough. He said, well, they got these grading sticks now that you jam into the wheel and you roughen that surface. And he said, then, see, well, watch me do this. And he did it. Then he around the surface of the tool. And then he shows it around, and it looked really bad. And then he flipped the stick around to the fine side of it, and he went at it again, and then he passed the tool around after he sharpened it. It looked real good. And I'm like, that's what's happening with these wheels, is we're not making them smooth enough. So we're using those T-like dressers, that comes a lot of times with a grinder you can buy independently. And those multiple diamonds that are in there, what they're doing is they're grading the wheel to a rougher result. So what happens is you've got all these large particles that are crowding the surface coming by and breaking that bevel on that tool and the edge of that tool. So I came out with what I felt like was a superior dresser. And what it is, it had a controlled depth of cut and a half-carat diamond. And you come back and forth, and you essentially diamond polish the surface of that wheel. That's why I get such good results on it. Later,
So Don, so I'm a Tormek user,
yes,
and so they've got the same kind of diamond thing. The flattened wheel and the dressing is two different grits. So the two different grits allow you really to go back and forth between a very fine cut, as you said. So does your diamond wheel give you something greater than 80%, like the Tormek fine dressing?
I don't know what 80% means.
80 grit.
80 grit.
Yeah, something finer than 80. You think?
If I understand your question, it's, I've got one. This is my dresser. I have two models of it that I was selling. And what it has is a half-carat diamond on the end, and it's controlled here. Okay, so you make really almost imperceptible adjustments for rotating, and it's threaded. And this one's got several holes in it, so you can work on different size tool rests. And if you'll notice, there's a concave surface on the edge here. And this one has the concave facing forward toward the distance end. And that's how I put that crown on the wheel. And this is my tool rest I was making. And so it would actually ride directly on here and create that convex surface on the surface of the wheel. But I don't quite understand what you're asking.
So Tormek has a similar system to flatten.
I'm familiar, I got one.
Yeah, and then the stone that grades it is two different grits.
This is the stick.
The stone is like a regular sharpening stone with a grit on two different grits on either side of it. The finer one gives you something more than the stone is notionally graded.
Okay. Well, what I'm doing, I have no grading stone. All I'm doing is going with the original 80 grit and 46 grit here.
But do you think that diamond is polishing it to greater than 80 grit?
I think, yes, absolutely, yes. In fact, if you were to ask me at any time, what is comparable, so we'll give you comparable results in CBN, and that would be an 80 grit and a 120. I'm talking 180, 80 and a 180. So you put a CBN wheel on here, 180 and 80. This gives you a final result for it. This is
That's what I would assume. Thanks.
So this is equivalent to like a 180 CBN. But unfortunately, I don't sell these anymore. In September, when I retired, I just quit making them. I was driven to do the crowning wheel dresser by calls that I was receiving from existing customers who said, well, I have your dresser, but can you do crown surface on the wheel? After I heard that about 8 times, I sort of started asking, so why is everybody calling me about this? And there was an article in Fine Woodworking magazine about the benefits of having a crown on the wheel. And that was primarily focused around pool grinding. That article they had was called pool grinding. And so they're using a lot of heat-sensitive tools. And heat-sensitive tools, when you're applying like to this kind of a surface, it got hot. There was a lot of friction, a large area of friction. Over here, they focus that friction down to such a small point that the tool hardly elevated in temperature whatsoever. Because they're using like a lot of carbon steel tools and things like plane irons and, you know, what do you call them? This, planes, yeah. But what we're doing, this is something I do want to bring up, is that all the tools pretty much that you can buy today from any reputable supplier in the United States or around the world, the tools are high-speed steel, various different treatments for hardness and all that, but those tools are not going to, the temper in those tools will not fail until after about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. I take a tool and very aggressively grind it to change the shape of it, you know, like going from a traditional grind to a side grind or something like that. I've used infrared thermometers and I've never been able to measure anything above about 750. And another factor about the steels that they're providing us today is those high-speed steels, which you don't want to do, contrary to what you'll see with carbon steel tools, that is, you don't want to dump them into water, especially when you're approaching a fine edge, you know, point of having a fine edge. Because what it'll do is it'll fracture that steel with micro fractures in it, and it can actually break little chips off. Yes?
The edge of that gold gouge that you pass around, it looks like it has a bead around the edge.
That's the
Spark.
burr.
You get the burr.
Yes.
So when I sharpen mine on a CBN wheel, I don't get that burr. What's the difference in performance of the cutting with and without the burr?
He's asking about the burr that is produced on the edge of the tool when it's been in contact with a wheel such as this. What grit of wheel they're using CBN, did you see that?
Maybe 600?
Pretty darn fine. That's probably why. Now, the benefit of having a burr edge like that is significant when you're doing an outside scraping finishing cut or shear cut where you drop the handle down to about a 45-degree angle and your flute of your tool is actually facing the piece. Top edge of it's about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch from the wood, never touching. And the bottom edge has that burr, and it's actually severing those fibers as they come by. And you'll see these little wispy little fibers, coming that came off or cut off of your piece. So anytime that I've finished the outside of a piece, I've learned to do very meticulous job of keeping it burr on the tool because it wears out in about that much linear surface. And so I have a rack full of tools that are identical to each other in terms of their blinds and the diameters and so on. And so I will use one up so it's about here, that much surface, put it down, grab another one, do a little more, grab another one, do a little more, and I'll work my way all the way to the base of the foot area. And then I go back and refresh all of those. And I'll refresh them, I do it again, and I'll refresh them, I do it a third time. And what my goal is there to have the most superior outside surface that I can in order to minimize the amount of sanding I've got today. And all that time I'm examining the surface, but without that burr on there, you can't do that work. Even if it's a scraper, you got a scraper you're trying to do with that wheel you're talking about, the scrapers require a burr. Instead of your scraper, you have, say, a 70-degree angle, and that scraper, that edge rod running along there has to have a burr on it. And when you present it to the wood, you have to elevate the handle. It's not a double riding tool. And so you elevate the handle and you go along like this, and it does essentially what I was doing with the gold gouge on the outside. But make sure that you might want to get a coarser grit. Has anybody got CVN wheels that are having better luck with a coarser grit doing this, producing a burr?
Okay,
So,
I think 180 CV. Okay.
so that's kind of equivalent to this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think you would get much more. And some people have asked me, they're like, I've got a 360 grit CVN wheel, why am I not getting a burr? Well, what CVN wheels, the way they're made is they have the particles that are attached to the surface of the metal base, and they're proud of the surface. And what they're doing is they come by the tool and it breaks grooves in that tool. And if you've got a very fine wheel, you're just not going to get a burr on it.
So apart from the cut that you described, for an interior cut, does the burr make a difference versus
On a tool?
a sharp cut that doesn't have a burr?
No, not that I know of. No. I don't do any scraping on the inside of my pieces. I turn bowls primarily, and I do no scraping on the inside. I don't use even negative rate scrapers. I have a couple really nice ones, and they'll probably be around 100 years after I'm gone. Because, I don't use them. I very seldom use them. That's a good question, I think. Anything else? So let me rattle on here forever. I used to have I say you always try. When I'm doing wood turning demos, in particular, I have a goal of very rapidly getting some shavings on the floor. So people go, he's going to talk, he's going to turn, And so I apologize for talking so much. And this weekend at Jack's, I will be there, and if you want to come get a little help, I've done these before, and you just blatantly, I'll just go out and say, oh yeah, bring the tool. So I did that at Jack's a while back, and people were bringing big bundles of tools like this, here, sharpen all these for me. And there's a line of people. I'm like, well, let's pick one or two that you're having much trouble with. So, in two reasons I shortened the arm on my Wolverine V-notch. First of all is I don't like this one sticking way out here. I've been to people's workshops who've actually drilled a hole in the wall behind the grinder because I said, what the hell is that hole for? They go, well, do you say how long this thing is? I said, do you have a hacksaw? Oh, hacksaw, he said, oh, okay. The other things, I travel with them, I travel a lot. So I get it in there. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna demonstrate my routine, and I'll verbalize a little bit about what I'm doing. But what I've got differently than what most of you have, part of my evolution system is that there's a stock collar on this arm, and right now I've got a 2-inch depth gauge here for setting the protrusion of the distance to gouge protrusion from the face of the jig. And I'll explain that more thoroughly. But what I figured out at 3 o'clock one morning was that if I kept pushing, I'll push it in and get exactly where I want to be, and if I take that ring and I'll push it up against here as the reference point, and I'll lock it in, I can always reproduce that one point. It's like, well, what about one of the points? What am I going to do? I'm a little stupid. Move that back a little bit and put a spacer in there that gives you, enables you to do more positions. So as you go in and out, what you're doing is you're changing the pitch at which the tool contacts the wheel. So if you have something that's at 45 degrees and you want it at 60, you back it up a little bit and you come further down on here and it goes to a steeper grind. Conversely, if you want something that's finer, you know, a more acute edge, then you go forward and push it up on the wheel and you get a more acute edge. So that's how we calibrate. We use that adjustment forward and back. We calibrate in order to create the bevel angle that we're after. And I'm going to show you right now exactly what I do. So I put this in. I take my old magic block here, which is nothing more than a rectangular block. It's got a couple magnets in it that help it stay in there. And I put it, we're getting this on camera. And that camera.
Which camera do you want?
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's going to be
Okay. So I put it up against the inside of that stop ring, and I push it up against the receiver, and I lock it in. Okay? What that's going to do for me is give me a reproducible angle of the tip. I push this in, so I'm holding the tool with a jig, push it in so it dead ends over here. This thing has got a hole that runs all the way through it. And I'm using this as a backstop. Okay? 3 magnets on it, it's 2 inches thick. It could just as easily be 1 3/4 inches, you'll see that sometimes. But in order to make it work, put it in here, tighten it. Okay. This could be held by the wolverine and berry vine, it could be held by, this is an older Ellsworth jig, this is a newer Ellsworth jig. This is an Ellsworth jig I made out of wood. If you're on a budget or you got a specific size pole, a diameter of the tool that you'd like to accommodate. So I got that in there. What I gotta do now I'm done. I'm done with that. I don't need to keep rolling back and forth. It's very, very repeatable because I use this little block and that stop. And I'm not changing anything here. If there's any variation whatsoever, I think what I do is I push this in here, but I didn't quite make that surface flat against this surface. It's tilted just a minor amount. But so pass this around. I really like to get it back. It's my favorite tool. I'm going to change the position of the block. Carefully set that. I just put a micro bevel on this tool, which is a very narrow, probably a 30-second, well, greater than 30 seconds of an inch width bevel. In order for it to be a micro bevel, I've got to have a relief grind at the bottom edge. And the relief grind really doesn't matter a whole lot, because it's never going to contact the wood. What you do is just getting it out of the way. I'm done with that tool. Nice bevel tool. So then, if I want to do a 40-40 grind, 40-40 is 40-40 grind, you go and do it by hand. It took me about 25 minutes to figure out how to do it with the jig. I call it my rendition of a 40-40 grind, but you get a lot better results in the jig than you do without. So what I'm going to do now, go to an overhead camera, please. You see? I'm going to place my berry grind. My berry grind got this. Right? I'm going to place it in here. I'm going to go push it up against the left wall. And so essentially I have set the berry grind arm, which controls the side grind on the tool, side grind on the tool, to a specific and repeatable location. What I got to do is go in here and push the head against here, and the tail against here. It's 7 inches apart, and I've got it set. And I'll come back 2 weeks from now, it'll be the same. All I got to do is put it back in. The 40-degree grind requires the same setting that I have now with the low block. Put my 40-40 tool in. Bottom it out 2 inches, just like before. Now this tool, I don't really roll it. Set right on the nose. Now I'm examining that edge. That's pretty close. But I was able to do the 40-40 because I got the side grind width that I want. I got the tip angle with this. Then the traditionally ground spindle gouge, most people like somewhere around 35, 40 degrees. And so I want to do this at 40 degrees. So again, I got to change the tip. I'm going to change this so the position of this plate needs to be changed. So now I'm going to come over. I got a little block that goes in here. Remember before I wanted to set 7 inches wide. I've got a 2-inch wide block. So that 2-inch wide block, I'll be setting it at 5 inches. Tighten that up well. This one, I'm actually going to take this out, take the whole box out. I'm going to put it more. Because I still need to get this pushed way up the wheel in order to reach that 40 degree. I'm putting a shim in the V-notch. So what that does is it positions the tool further up on the wheel.
John,
Small tool.
as you continue to sharpen and the diameter of the wheel becomes smaller,
So
as you continue to sharpen and your wheel diameter starts to decrease, thrust and so forth, how do you compensate?
Well, I haven't done any calibration yet, I'll show you. It takes 5 minutes. Keep asking about changing the diameter of the wheel, and that would then effectively change the angle. I dress my wheels before I start turning every day. And I probably make that readjustment every 5 months. And I realize that there might be a 2-degree difference. Between the whole, of course, the CBN wheel won't change. So it would be a definite, just starts to go. So now I should be able to match that 40-degree grind. Pretty good. So what we've done, best talking and answering questions and all that, I was able to do the 60 single bevel hold out, 70 micro bevel, 50 release grind, and the 40 degree, 40 degree tool, bowl tool, and the 40 degree traditional grind, all of it. In my shop, practical reality, I primarily use 60 degree bowl gouge, so I have multiple stuff. I have a micro bevel tool to do the inside bottoms piece of the bowl, and that's a 70-50. And I use a hand sharpened convex bevel spindle gouge that I'll show you in a few minutes. But those are 3 tools, my go-to tool. And in my shop, I've already got 20 60 degree single bevel bowl gouges, 5-inch diameter. Because I've got 3 lathes and I'll just love to buy more gouges. But can you see the beauty of being able to just go from one to another to another to another? I'm going to pass this around to you, and I can talk about what can we get a view of it, please. Okay. In this whole box, I'm going to send around. I don't think I need to send it very around. I'll just pull it out. Okay. But if you have a very grind or an Ellsworth jig or whatever, don't need to see it. This is a gauge block. This is a gauge block that I made out of wood. The ones in my system that passed were made on a CNC mill or aluminum. But it's got 2 little magnets and it's the same thing. I'm going to be providing you all the dimensions for the little block and also give you a table that you're going to head up on their club website. And the table will give you what the settings were for each angle of each type of tool. So that you're not usually hearing what the heck, that was great, but do you remember what that link was? No. Stop, get another beer, we'll think about it. But so anyhow, so there's the little block. Here's the shim to use only for the spindle gouge to put in the bead, moving everything forward. stop ring, you get those from Amazon, $2.75, $3. Two-sided box, it's 7 inches wide, 2-inch wide shim that you can make. There's a 3/4 inch shim down here in the corner, which is glued in place. So I'm doing calibration, and I'll do a number of these different ones. I can use a 6 1/4 instead of, it'll be 6 1/4 to take 3/4 off of 7 inches. And so I have one box that's 7 inches wide that gives me 3 dimensions. And easy to make. Run a piece of wood, 7 inches wide, 9 inches long, put walls on it, put a couple of shims in, and on through. Real easy to do. Went ahead and put one of these in the box so you can see that. I can see Phil, just like Rockaway, you know that? I can see. I just like that show. When I started dating, that's kind of thrown me to that. Oh, and I put a gouge in here to use as reference. So when you do a calibration, I'll show you how to do it. Usually you have to have a reference in order to the initial setup position of that ring. But this happens to be a 60-degree angle, and this is a trick. It's not a trick you have $40 anymore, but with your level of experience, you should know that when you want to match the position using the bevel as a reference, just put a little bit of blackening on here with a Sharpie. Get it in your jig, lean it against your wheel, and rotate that wheel backwards by a finger with it off. And you'll hear it go kind of, you know you're not on the right point. You just you look at it and you say, well, it's running a little bit too much on the bottom. So it means I got to move it back a little bit. And it starts going more across. And then at one point, you'll get a fairly even line ground across this right here. Do it right at the tip. Don't do it all around the side. The side grinds are controlled by your jig. So just use that as, and also if you're doing scrapers, something like that over here, just in your platform rest. It's really nice to be able to look at the actual contact points, see that wear happening. Questions about that? Well, send this around.
I've got one of them. Start right there.
Okay. That's good to know.
I bought it from you, I think.
I hope so. Bernie did say he wanted it.
He didn't tell me.
Watch it, Geiger. Stop calling. Still got one good arm.
He's taller than me. I gotta be careful. Oh, John, somebody, I'll start here. Just to show you that you can also do this with smaller tools. That's a 1/4 inch diameter bowl gouge side ground. That's a 3/8 diameter bowl gouge side ground. Looks just like the other grinds. What I like about it is, I'll do some miniature work, but what I like about it is when I go to use the tool, whether it's this big or this big or this big, they all have the same grind on it. I'm really thinking what I'm going to do, how I'm going to handle it, how I'm going to make my cuts. So just realize that you can do it with, on small tools as well. We're going to make it. What I want to show you is the calibration procedure. So, we can do it with a, all right, when you're going to calibrate, have the stop ring loose. Take whatever jig you're going to be using as a standard. You're going to use the very grind, you're going to use the L4. Few people have the L4. You got it, but you're fixed. You got it, you're fixed. I'm not so sure about that. So when you're going to, before you calibrate with the very grind, you always want to set that arm before you do anything else. But we're going to set the side grind position first, then we're going to set the tip angle. So, overhead please. So remember what I was saying about the yellow block that's glued to this wall? I'm going to push up against it. That gives me a setting of 6 1/4 inches. So from here to here is 6 1/4 inches. And incidentally, while I was learning to do these things, what I was doing was setting this down on the table, adjusting it up, and trying to match that point right there to a known level, 6 1/4 inches, for instance. But with that round edge, whatever. I like repeatability, so I like quickness, so I was using this little box. So anyhow, so I set that. That's going to be what I'm going to use on a calibrate. I'm going to use one on 60 degrees. There it is. I got one here that says reference fine. So I know that I've got an accurate 60 degree reference. I'm going to use the same 2-inch block. I'm going to blacken the end of this tool. Don't do that much, just a little bit. I'll keep it centered up. Put it in the V. Get down where you can see it. Contact a little bit more on the bottom than it is on the top. Oh, I make these changes. This is kind of interesting. Rather than just holding here and pulling it to go brace the mouse and you're on control, what I do is I put my hand around it. I put my thumbs both on the bar, the square bar, and against the receiver. I just kind of squeeze. And I can make a very minute adjustment. I don't hear anything. Of course, maybe my hearing aids just Ooh. See that, Bill? A good match. Okay, meet me later. I'll buy you. See how it...
Yep.
So that easily I was able to set that. Then I would take my little block, and that was using these blocks, you really need magnets in them, that you get the ground off metals from your tools on here. That's going to affect the dimension of the piece. So make sure they're clean before you put it in. I'm going to put it up against the receiver. I'm going to bring this forward. Push and pinch the little block between the surface of that. And so now, calibrate. I'm done. Again, maybe 6 months, 9 months later, depending on how much my wheel may have changed in diameter, I have to go through all that again. That was really tough, wasn't it? Some people go, I don't want to go with all that trouble. Like, anyway. But so now, I'm calibrated to do all those other grinds, because they're all based on one calibration. So what I can do is, I'll show you here. I'm at 60 degrees. If I put the tool in here, and I've got that set at 6¼ inches. But if I want to do the micro bevel, all I do, you can see this pretty well on there, is I rotate this to the longer dimension, this is 2 inches, push it against there, and I'm ready for the, to do a micro bevel. If I want to do a, relief grind, I'll switch it to a 7/8 inch dimension. So I just did 3 different levels. So I'm going to do, I can also use that position and change into a very grind arm in order to get the 40/40 to work. And then I can go to the 5 inch dimension, take this out, put that little shim in here, and now I'm suddenly at the 40-degree traditional grind. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. Probably what put me out of business. It was just too simple. But I know what happens. I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning with an idea to run out to the shop in my shorts, and my wife's going, there goes it again. You must have thought of something else. You know? I was like, yes, sir.
I have a theoretical question, which is that there's a curvature of the wheel when you're sharpening. What if you were sharpening against a surface that was totally flat? Like, imagine if you had a jig that would do it against the side of the wheel, so you're sharpening against a totally flat surface.
Okay.
The difference.
What he's asking about is the difference between a flat surface grind and a what we call a hollow grind, the concave surface. And what some people think is, or theorize, is that your friction on the wood, where the tool is applied to it, is greater on a flat surface like that. Also, being able to reproduce it without rolling, you know, especially if you're doing any hand grinding. There are systems out there like Makita that used to make a flat one. It was just a flat wheel. I got something kind of like that in diamond that I use on glass, but it runs like a record, for instance. But they had these jigs and stuff, and you can bring it down, and that's the same. But hollow grinds, the other thing about a hollow grind is your actual relationship between the bevel and the edge, and it, where the, let's call it the flute, and here converge, is a much finer result, a more acute angle than if this was flat. And if you put a gauge on there, on both of those, say one was the concave, you came up with 60 degrees. And one was flat, you do 60 degrees. Because it measures those angles. It's all doing is measuring the angle. But then if you examine what's really occurred, your head's finer. That's a very good thought. But I thought about some of that myself. And, again, I refer to Ellsworth's got a book, and he talks about that a little bit. You might want to look it up. But he does believe that more the hollow grind is more applicable to our needs. Okay. And I hope I didn't evade your question.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. All right, so we're not quite done here with this. I want to show you something. Let's say that I've got a tool that is grossly different from what I really want in a grind. So the shape of it's wrong or whatever. And so I want to get it over on the forestry. This is a 46 grit. Again, I'm getting a good result with 46 grit because of the way the diamond brusher works. But let's say that if I'm just going to assume that I could take this arm out with that position that I've already found to work for what I'm doing, and I move it over here, why doesn't that work? Why doesn't that give me the same result?
Wheel diameter?
Could be wheel diameter. Could be this position here.
Right.
As far as the back of this. So what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is to do a match calibration. So I've got this one that is marked coarse. So I know that when I take it out and I travel and I put it back in, I know which side it goes in. Because I have calibrated to this diameter wheel in this position. And so what I would do is I would produce a grind on a tool here, which I've already had. I'm going to put it at the calibration 60-degree position. Okay? It matches here perfectly. So what I do to do a match calibration, I put that same tool without changing anything whatsoever over here, and I do the same adjustment process that I did here. I'll lock it in, move my stop ring up against that block, I move the block over there. And so now essentially what I've done is I have matched perfectly what I'm getting here and what I'm getting here. So they match perfectly. So that's what I call match calibration. Any questions about that? I'm sure you got one. I like the way you think. You question things. That's good. Does that make any sense to you? Or two people? All right, that's all long. Got two people. So, think about these things wherever you encounter them. If you're having a difficulty with something, discuss it with some of your other, club members, other turners that you know. Try to stay off YouTube. I'm not a huge, when I was growing up in Woodturners, there was no YouTube. In fact, we had a hard time finding a VHS tape, that somebody had produced. I got one by Del Stubbs, was the very first one I ever had. The second one I had was David Ellsworth, because I was going to go study with David, and I must have watched it 20 or 30 times. I had a little TV in my shop, and it had one of those built-in VCRs, and remote control. That was the big step. And remote control, I watched this thing 20 or 30 times. Then I go to the class, and I'm trying to do this, David said, that's not quite right. Do this a little bit. And I try it again. Just like this. It's amazing when you've got an expert in front of you, and so even if you watch this video exhaustively, and it's done very well, but there's just a little bit of tweaking. I found that to be true in golf. I would have some kind of a huge problem that was just killing me, and all these buddies of mine that I play golf with, put your elbow over here, put your foot like that, and put your head like this, and then hit it. It'll be perfect, and it never really worked. Then you go to the club pro, and you hit about 8 balls, and he goes, he said, just that much. You start hitting pretty good straight balls. And he goes, anything else you want to do? You want to hit the rest of the buckets? But it's in the presence of an expert, really makes a big difference. I encourage all of you to take classes. There's all these schools and opportunities and whatever, do hands-on classes. Even our weekend deals, the 2 weekend deals we do on Saturday, I feel like probably one of the most valuable parts of the club is to have a chance to get up there and get your hands on it instead of listening to me talk about it, or Zach talk about it, or Matt talk about it, or whatever. But get your hands on it. Got a little time. don't see anybody rattling the keys, so. There are three tools that I live and die by, is Woodturning and the outside of hog ones. Two. One is the 683 single bevel side ground ball gouge, which is the first one they did here. The second one that I rely on very heavily for doing really fine inside finishing cuts to smooth out the inside of my bowls is the 7050, the micro bevel with the relief grind. And the third tool, which we haven't discussed yet, is a 3/8 inch. I'll pass one around, but it's a 3/8 inch convex bevel. So instead of flat, it's convex. And it probably comes out at about 20 degrees, something like that. It's hard to measure because you got a curved surface. You know, you can't really put that gauge on it and come up with a good result. It's a very fine edge. The edge doesn't last very long. It's extremely helpful. But it's a tool that needs to be sharpened, not in a jig, but it has that convex surface. So what I found where it would work, I can do this without killing myself. I got my hearing aids in, and this is a cheap Harbor Freight. The only drawback is it's real noisy. So I can't hear a thing y'all say. If my pants are on fire, you're gonna come up and put it out for me, but I won't be able to hear you. So this is a 1-inch wide belt sander that I've gotten a huge amount of work out of. I didn't stay with they used to supply like 120 grit wheel, 120 grit belt for grinding wood. But I was on Amazon one time and I found these silicone carbide belts that go up to 1,000 grit. This is 1,000 grit that's on here. And what I'm after is to get as polished a result as I can on this. Let's see that. But this is called a platen, and you want to be above the platen, see where it's softer here than here. And one of the things about that is that it comes to the joint, it'll boom, 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 every time it comes by on the platen, you put pressure there. But this being soft like that, I think it kind of conforms around. We're trying to do something really fine here. And when you're working on a sandy belt, you don't want to put this leading edge into the belt, or it's going to rip into it. So you want to address the belt by having your tool there vertical. Good lighting is important. I don't have that here. But, well, wait till I go to the HOW, I'll set my own light. Do in the park there. That was a less stop on this side. What's this tool for? This tool, if I was sent away 10,000 miles away to do woodturning, I would want this tool with me and my single bevel side ground ball gouge is 60. Those are the two I've got to have. I'm sort of lost without these tools. I would be in bad shape. The third tool is the micro bevel tool to do the inside. but I've learned to like it so well that I use it every time I film, every time on the board. But this tool, when you're making a dovetail or a straight, yeah. But if you're making your dovetail for your truck, or you're making it, you have a cylindrical shape that you need, this is the ideal tool to go in there and actually cut. What do you laugh about, Jason?
He's messing with the camera.
Sorry.
Way above his pay grade.
You know, I didn't realize I was losing hair until I was at a demo a few years ago. And I really got like, why are they putting the camera on me? And it was my head. So anyway, if you want to do your dovetail, instead of scraping it, I like to cut it. And so I use this little bitty tool to go in there, and it's so sharp, I go in and I make my cut, and then I'll bring it back over here and make my cut, and make my cut, and it tapers that dovetail, just gives me an opportunity to do it perfectly. But down where that end of that dovetail meets the wood, it has to be undercut a little bit. And this is the ideal tool for doing that. And then the other thing is whenever I almost always jam cut my pieces towards the end in order to produce my foot. So I do as much as I can using a larger tool, you know, size your own hole gouge. When it comes to a point when you've got to work under the live center nose and you produce like a little cone there, and this tool right here enables me to do that. So I'll cut this way, and I'll cut this way, cut this way, cut this way. So I'll whittle all that off, so I see a little cone of wood left. And that's what the live center is pushing the piece against using the pushing piece up against the jam shot. So then I can use this to literally kind of, because of that convex surface that's not going to damage the wood, I can kind of start working like this, and I'll concave the surface of that foot. I believe it has a concave surface on the foot rather than a flat. The flat's just not, you know, the piece is going to work a little bit, it's going to be really hard to get it back flat. Whereas if you've got a little rim around there, and it changes shape a little bit as it dries, it's easier to stand that flat again. Okay? So it's just a little rim instead of the whole foot. But those are the two primary uses I use this for. They're very popular stones. You would all have one of them. I tried handing it the other day a while ago, you go, oh, I got one.
Well, he just gonna hold on to it.
That's right.
He's a great guy, Bob. Happy to have him. So, now, I got a couple more minutes, unless y'all want to run out. When you're going to sharpen a roughing gouge, you know what a spindle roughing gouge is? I'd like to have one here. There it is.
There you go.
Yeah. Where do we want to go? That's not very good shot.
Yeah.
Well, I'll pass it on. But the spindle roughing gouge, what I would strongly discourage is to have this long arm that comes with Wolverine, slide it way back, put this in the V, this against the wheel, and rotate like that. It's a very, very, very dangerous thing to do. I've seen it numerous times where people don't keep up with the proper angle. This gets a little low on the wheel. Next thing you know, it snatches it down. It'll break or bend the tang off right here, sometimes making this a projectile flying off in space. This tool should only be used as a spindle tool, which means your grain's running between centers like a baseball bat. You don't ever want to stick it to any wood that's got side, face running like this. You're going to ask for a lot of trouble. It's going to dig in. It's going to do this. I've got pictures of these broken. I've got pictures of them bent. When we teach classes at these schools, you got 14 students coming in, you don't even know. And what we do is we take all of the spindle welding gouges, because it's going to be a bowl class or a hollow form class, take all of these and I'll hide them. I'll put them in a locked cabinet. And then I get a phone call next week, I was teaching spindle class. Ron, did you hide those things? Where are they at? Where's the keys? Okay. But, so alternatively, what I recommend is to get some of these extra ones, dedicate the purpose of supporting this. I have a stop ring on here.
Watch your feet. You're moving the corner. Just don't want you to trip.
I have a stop ring on here. This is preset. I don't change it unless I need to recalibrate. I put some lines. On here that can help me keep an orientation, perpendicular to the surface of the wheel. And when I'm going to sharpen it, I'm going to be rolling this like this in the presence of the surface of that wheel and trying to stay on the platform level. But one thing is if I hold the tool like this with my hand and I want to do this, watch what happens. See where the handle goes? The handle goes left and right. Just throwing it off of this perpendicular orientation. So what I'd like to do instead is twist it. So I use 3 fingers to twist it with. Just like I took a bottle cap. I'll tighten a bottle cap. Okay? The other thing is I can plant my feet on the floor and I put the side of my hand against my body and I hold it here and now I'm steady this way. So what I can do is come in and I go, see that? I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah. No.
Oh, you're doing that. Okay, sorry.
But it's solid on that surface. It's a reproducible angle. And I have another one for the traditionally ground, you know what a traditionally ground bowl gouge is? Anybody not know what that is? It's okay, you can edit if you don't know. We're all friends.
I don't know.
Think of it.
Okay. Traditionally ground bowl gouge is the same as if you had that V-notch, like we were talking about before, the no-no, put a handle in there and you just roll it like this. There is no side grind to it. Okay? That style was used almost exclusively in bowl turning until like 1982. 1982, Ellsworth and Reiki and a couple others started experimenting. Liam O'Neill were all experimenting with side grinds at that point and getting away from you. 2 distinct cuts to this tool, and both these were push cuts. But you go to a side grind, you expand it, as soon as that tool with a new grind on it, you expand it up to 5 cuts. So you increase the utility of that tool just by changing the grind. But if you were going to work with this, one of the things that's used for today, you'll see people using what they call a bottom feeder. And the bottom feeder, you'll see them advertised all over, Doug Thompson, and all kinds of different people. And what you're doing is you put that in there, in the bottom of that piece, and just work toward the center. It works pretty well. But what I don't want you to do is to put it in a V, and the V notch and do this. So it's going to. Now, that running gouge, you think it's a problem, it's at 45 degrees, so it's pretty up on the wheel, pretty good ways if you maintain 45. This is at 60, up to 85 degrees. People are using them up to 85 degrees. So, the only way I know to do it repeatedly and also safely, again, I've got lines on here to keep that perpendicular position, but I treat it very much like I did the spindle gouge. You see that action? This is planting up here. I'm not out like that. I'm not doing like this. I'm not, but all I had to do to match that grind, after I got it, was to make the stop and position of stopping here and not change this unit. This one, I mark it for general purpose. And general purpose means that's what I'm going to use when I dress the wheel. That's what I'm going to use for experimentation or whatever. I don't have a stop collar on it. I can just loosen it and go wherever I want. Any questions whatsoever? I think we're about done tonight, but I hope this was beneficial to you. And again, I'm always open to questions. Now, I'm going to be giving Matt two tables. They'll have all the dimensions of all settings and all that stuff. You're sitting out there right now. I don't always, that's the way I would have felt. But this stuff's been tried and true, and it works. So, if I can be of any help to you, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.